Chapter 22. The Child of Eternity. The path was quiet, shrouded in a mist that seemed to dampen every sound, as if the world itself had held its breath. Caleb and Katya walked side by side, their recent experiences weighing heavily on their minds. But the silence was soon broken by the soft sound of footsteps, almost too light to be real. Ahead of them, standing alone in the middle of the path, was a child. She seemed no older than 6 or 7, with golden curls cascading over her shoulders, eyes that shimmered with an impossible array of colors, and skin that gleamed with an iridescent glow. She looked like something from a dream, a being both beautiful and terrifying. As they approached, she smiled, a gentle yet knowing expression that made Katya's skin prickle. Who are you?" Katya asked, her voice soft, almost reverent. The child inclined her head, her multicolored eyes fixed on them with an intensity far beyond her years. "I am Kalasai, and I've been waiting for you, Katya and Caleb." Caleb's gaze narrowed, wary yet curious. "Waiting for us? Why?" Kalasai's smile widened slightly, as if she found his suspicion amusing. "I was sent to help you, to show you what must be seen, and to guide you in defying the control of the gods. You have already glimpsed what could become of you, visions of futures twisted by fear and desire. But those were only glimpses, mere fragments of the paths that lie before you." The mist began to thicken around them, and the landscape blurred. Caleb instinctively reached for Katya's hand, feeling the world shift, as if they were being drawn somewhere beyond time itself. Kalasai's voice echoed through the fog, soft and melodic, yet carrying an unmistakable weight. "This universe is only one of infinite numbers, worlds without end. Some are benevolent and life-giving. Others are filled with malice and hunger, dark places where powers older than time lie ravenous, waiting. Who are you in this vast multiverse, Katya and Caleb? Are you bound to the roles set for you by others? Or will you forge your own path?" Her eyes, endless in their multicolored depths, seemed to pierce through them. "We never lose our demons, you know. We only learn to live above them, a place beyond time." The fog cleared, and Caleb and Katya found themselves standing in a place unlike any they had ever seen. A void that felt both infinite and intimate, filled with shifting colors and lights that seemed to pulse with life. It was a realm beyond reality, where time and space held no meaning, where they felt both vast and minuscule, as if they were atoms in a cosmic sea. "Where are we?" Caleb asked, his voice barely more than a whisper. "Somewhere that exists outside of time," Kalasai replied, her voice echoing through the vastness. "Here, you are free from the constraints of the mortal plane and the gods who seek to control you. Here, you may see yourselves as you truly are." Kalasai reached out, her small hand outstretched, and a shimmering mirror-like surface appeared before them. Within its depths, reflections shifted, alternate versions of themselves, flickering in and out of focus. They saw glimpses of the lives they could lead, each one more startling than the last. "What you saw in the Court of Gray, Katya, and in the Court of Darkness, Caleb, those were real possibilities," Kalasai said, her tone solemn. "But there are countless other realities, each darker and more twisted than the last." She waved her hand, and the mirror shifted, revealing a vision of Katya, alone and cold, ruling over a world devoid of warmth. Another reflection showed Caleb, cloaked in shadows, ruling as a tyrant, his power absolute yet empty. Each possibility was a warning, a path they could take if they surrendered to fear, lust, or power without love. "These are potential futures," Kalasai continued. "But there is a choice before you now. You can embrace vulnerability and face your truths together. Or you can continue down paths where balance is kept, but at the cost of yourselves." Katya felt a chill run through her. Vulnerability. It was a word that felt as foreign as it did frightening. She glanced at Caleb, whose expression mirrored her own mixture of fear and resolve.
"The choice."
Kalasai stepped closer, her eyes softening with a hint of compassion. "The gods may manipulate. They may set paths before you. but they do not hold absolute power over you. In the mortal plane, your powers are not fully awakened, but they exist within you. You are gods in your own right, bound only by the limits you accept. Katya felt a spark of something, hope, or perhaps defiance, flare within her. "How can we awaken them?" she asked, her voice steady. Kalasai smiled, her expression mysterious. "By being honest with yourselves. By facing your truths without fear. Your power is tied to your will, and the more you accept who you are, the stronger you will become." The child took both of their hands, her touch warm and surprisingly grounding. Astral projection is one way to unlock your potential. It will allow you to find balance and move between worlds without tipping the scales of darkness in the mortal realm. But that balance must first exist within you. Caleb looked down at Kalasai, his gaze searching. "So, we can defy the gods. We can create our own path." She nodded. "Yes. But only if you are vulnerable and honest with yourselves, and with each other." Katya's heart pounded, her fear mingling with hope. She had always guarded herself, her feelings and doubts hidden even from Caleb. But if they were to have a future, if they were to escape the fates thrust upon them, she knew she would have to let those walls down. "Vulnerability," she murmured, the word heavy on her tongue. Kalasai squeezed her hand. "Without it, you will be bound to the lives you glimpsed. Those futures are not idle threats. They are as real as the air you breathe. But together, with truth and trust, you can forge a new path. You are more than the roles set by your parents, by the gods." She looked at them both, her eyes shifting through colors that seemed to capture the entire universe within them. "Make your choice, Katya and Caleb. Are you willing to be vulnerable, to forge strength together, or will you live the futures that await if you remain divided?" They shared a long, silent look. Caleb reached out, his hand resting gently on Katya's shoulder, and for a moment, everything else faded away. "I don't want those futures," he said, his voice rough with emotion. "I want to choose us. To be strong, together." Katya's resolve steadied, and she gave a small nod. "Then let's choose it. Together." A revelation of power. Kalasai nodded approvingly, her young face shining with an ageless wisdom. She waved her hand, and suddenly, they felt a surge of energy pulse through them, as if a dormant part of themselves had been awakened. "You have taken the first step," Kalasai said. "Your power will continue to grow as you embrace who you truly are. Remember, strength lies not in defiance alone but in unity." She held out her hand, and a small, intricately carved talisman appeared, its surface engraved with symbols of balance and duality. "This will help you focus, to project yourselves beyond the mortal plane and access your power without disrupting the world. But remember, your greatest strength is honesty." Katya took the talisman, feeling its warmth, a reminder of the choice they had made. Together, they would face whatever lay ahead, and they would do it on their own terms. Kalasai smiled, her gaze gentle. "You have everything you need now. Go forth and shape the life you desire." The world began to blur around them, the timeless realm fading as they were pulled back to reality. But Kalasai's voice lingered, a soft echo in their minds. "The gods may control the paths of many, but you are more than their pawns. You are gods in your own right."
Return to reality and confrontation. The world solidified around them, and they found themselves back on the path, the mist lifting to reveal a familiar yet daunting sight. The figures of Zeus and Hades standing before them, their expressions filled with anger and disappointment. Zeus's voice was like thunder, his eyes blazing. "What have you done?" Katya lifted her chin, her newfound strength steadying her as she met her father's gaze. "We've chosen our own path." Hades stepped forward, his gaze fixed on Caleb with a mixture of fury and disbelief. "You dare defy us, Zagreus? You think you're above the fates we've laid out for you?" Caleb's expression hardened, and he reached for Katya's hand, holding it tightly. "We've glimpsed your plans, and we won't be bound by them. We are more than what you've forced us to be." Their parents' expressions darkened, the air around them crackling with tension, but Katya felt no fear. She and Caleb had seen the truth, and they were ready to face whatever consequences awaited them. Together, they stood, defiant and united, prepared to confront the gods and carve out their own destiny. Chapter 23: The Divine Game. The air shimmered with a golden haze as Zeus and Hades stepped forward, their expressions twisted with barely veiled satisfaction. They had listened to Katya's and Caleb's defiance, their declaration of independence, and now, a sly smile curled on Zeus's lips. "If you wish to forge your own path," Zeus intoned, his voice like a thunderclap, "you must first prove you are worthy of it. The gods don't simply hand out freedom." He exchanged a glance with Hades, a knowing smirk passing between them. "We propose a game." Katya's gaze narrowed, her fingers itching with the urge to draw upon the power she could feel simmering beneath her skin. "What kind of game?" Hades smiled, his gaze fixed on Caleb with a dark amusement. "A trial of wit, strength, and resilience. You must face challenges from each of us, tasks we deem worthy of gods. Complete them, and you earn your freedom. Fail, and you return to us, bound by the futures you glimpsed." Caleb's jaw tightened, but he kept his gaze steady. "And if we refuse?" Zeus's laughter rumbled through the air, sending chills down their spines. "Refuse, and you will know suffering as only the gods can create. You will lose not only your power, but each other." Katya's heart pounded, and she shot Caleb a look, their silent agreement passing between them. They had come too far to turn back. They would face whatever challenge lay ahead. "Very well," Katya said, her voice steady. "We accept." Entering the arena, the world shifted around them, and suddenly they found themselves in a massive coliseum, its stone walls towering over them. The stands were filled with deities and supernatural beings from every corner of existence, their eyes gleaming with anticipation, eager to see this mortal-born pair test their limits. As they scanned the crowd, Katya noticed two figures stepping forward, both of them exuding a strange and intoxicating energy. The first was Talia, a goddess of mirth and trickery. Her laughter filled the arena, her mischievous smile promising games of her own. By her side was Tiras, the god of riddles, with a sly expression and an air of mystery that made Katya instantly wary. "Welcome to our little event," Talia purred, her voice smooth as silk. "We're here to ensure that your trials are not only challenging, but also amusing." Tiras stepped forward, his eyes twinkling with mirth. "Oh, we'll make it fair, by our standards at least." He chuckled, then turned his gaze on Caleb and Katya, as if evaluating their every strength and weakness. Katya rolled her eyes, whispering to Caleb, "We're going to have to outsmart them. They're gods of trickery, which means this game is going to be anything but straightforward." Caleb nodded, leaning closer. "Then let's play along. But we'll keep one step ahead." The first challenge, the Obsidian Labyrinth. With a flick of her wrist, Talia conjured a maze of black stone, stretching across the arena like a shadowy web. "Your first task," she announced, her eyes gleaming, "is to find your way to the center of the labyrinth. But beware, the paths change with every step, and there are distractions." Katya took a deep breath, and they entered the labyrinth together, the darkness swallowing them whole. As they moved forward, the walls seemed to close in, twisting and shifting in unnatural patterns. Shadows flickered at the edges of her vision, and strange, haunting laughter echoed down the corridors. "What kind of distractions are we talking about?" Katya asked warily, her voice barely above a whisper. Almost as if on cue, a shadowy figure appeared in front of them, a mirror image of Caleb, his face twisted in malice, his eyes gleaming with hunger for power. The doppelganger sneered. "Why waste your time with empathy, Caleb? Embrace the darkness. Power without mercy. That's the way to rule." Caleb clenched his fists, feeling the tug of the darkness within him. He could sense the temptation, the allure of unchecked power, but he also felt Katya's hand at his back, grounding him. "I'm not here to be consumed," he replied, his voice steady. "Power means nothing without someone to share it with." The doppelganger laughed, but as Caleb's resolve strengthened, the image dissolved, leaving only shadows in its wake. Katya touched his arm, her expression proud. "You've got this," she murmured. As they continued, Katya found herself confronted by a twisted version of herself. A version that was cold, calculating, her eyes devoid of warmth. This version of herself mocked her desire for connection, sneering that love was a weakness she would regret. But Katya took a deep breath, remembering Kalasai's words and the bond she shared with Caleb. "Love isn't weakness," she said firmly. "It's my strength." With that, the image faded, and the walls of the labyrinth shifted, opening a path to the center. The second challenge, the Dance of Shadows. As they reached the center of the labyrinth, Tyrus appeared, his eyes gleaming with a twisted delight. "Oh, very good. You've passed the first test. But now, let's see how you fare with the Dance of Shadows." Before they could react, they were transported to a grand ballroom, the floor covered in a mirrored surface that reflected strange, otherworldly shapes. Figures surrounded them, beings with faces hidden behind masks, their movements fluid yet eerie. Talia's voice echoed through the room, laughing. "The rules are simple. Dance with the shadows and do not falter. If you lose your step, you lose your memory of each other." Katya felt her heart race as the masked figures moved toward them, their hands outstretched in invitation. "A memory game," she murmured, glancing at Caleb. "We have to stay connected. We can't let them pull us apart." They took each other's hands, moving together as the shadowy figures circled them, their masked faces a blur of temptation and trickery. The figures tried to draw them away, whispering seductive lies, attempting to sow doubt and jealousy. One figure leaned close to Caleb, murmuring, "She'll leave you. She's afraid of your power." Another leaned into Katya, hissing, "He can't resist the darkness. He'll never truly let you in." But Katya held Caleb's hand tighter, her eyes meeting his with determination. "They're trying to trick us. They don't know who we are." Caleb nodded, his voice steady. "Then let's show them." Together, they moved in perfect harmony, each step defying the shadows and strengthening their bond. As they danced, the figures began to fade, their lies dissolving into the air. Talia's laughter grew faint, and with a final turn, they broke free, finding themselves back in the Colosseum. The final challenge, the choice of power. Hades and Zeus stood before them, their expressions cold and expectant. Tyrus stepped forward, his tone turning grave. "You have one final choice before you, the power you seek, or the love you have fought for." Zeus held out his hand, a golden aura shimmering around him. "If you choose power," he said, his voice a command, "I will grant you each your full godly strength, making you forces to rival the Olympians." Hades stepped forward, his hand extended, dark energy swirling around him. "Or," he intoned, "you may choose each other. But if you do, your power will be restrained, bound to the mortal plane." Katya and Caleb shared a long look, the weight of the decision pressing down on them. They could feel the temptation of the power offered to them, a strength that would allow them to change the world, to stand as gods unchallenged. But in that moment, Caleb felt a surge of clarity, remembering the visions of himself consumed by darkness, of a life filled with only power and control. And Katya remembered her own cold, empty future, ruling without love or warmth. Caleb took Katya's hand, his voice steady and resolute. "I choose you. We'll find our own way, without their power." Katya nodded, her heart full of conviction. "Together, we're strong enough." The gods' faces darkened, disappointment flashing in Zeus's eyes, a glimmer of reluctant respect in Hades's. They had made their choice, and there would be consequences, but it was a choice they had made together. A new path. As the Colosseum faded, they found themselves back in the mortal realm, their hearts lighter, a new strength flowing between them. Though they had forsaken the gods' power, they felt the resonance of something deeper, the bond they had forged through vulnerability, honesty, and unity. Zeus and Hades may have laid the path, but they had chosen their own way forward.
Chapter 24. A Father's Pride. In the ethereal heights of Olympus, a storm gathered above the golden throne of Zeus, casting shadows that danced in the thunderous light. Zeus leaned back, his gaze fixed on the swirling clouds, a faint smile playing on his lips. He sensed a familiar presence beside him, a darker energy mingling with his own. Hades stepped forward, his movements languid, his expression one of careful indifference. Yet there was a spark of amusement in his dark eyes as he looked up at his brother. They succeeded, Hades murmured, a touch of pride slipping through his otherwise stoic tone. Our children have proven themselves far more resilient than I expected. Zeus chuckled, his laughter deep and resonant. Indeed, I had my doubts, but it seems they have a way of surprising us. The two gods stood side by side, their gazes turned toward the mortal realm, where Caleb and Katya's determination and unity had carved a path of defiance. There was a satisfaction between them, an unspoken pride at what their children had become. Yet, beneath the pride, there lingered a sense of inevitability, a knowledge that Caleb and Katya's journey had only begun. They think they've won freedom, Zeus mused, a glimmer of mischief in his eyes. They've barely scratched the surface of their potential. Hades nodded, his voice a low rumble. But in time they'll understand. They're not simply mortal-born demigods. They're meant to rule, to shape the world. Zeus's gaze shifted to Hades, a sly smile curving his lips. They've carved their path together, forged their bond through trials of their own making. That, at least, is something to respect. A rare chuckle slipped from Hades, his tone edged with dark amusement. Let them believe they're free for now. In the end, destiny has a way of catching up. He glanced back at Zeus, his voice laced with satisfaction. They'll rule as we intended, though they don't know it yet. The gods shared a knowing look, a shared understanding of the intricate web of fate that bound their children to destinies they couldn't yet fathom. For now, they would allow Caleb and Katya their freedom. But there would come a day when their paths would cross again, and the future they were meant to shape would unfold.
Back at the hotel, Katya and Caleb returned to the Grand Hotel, their steps lighter, yet burdened with the weight of their newfound understanding. They sought out Pythia, the high priestess, who was waiting for them in the quiet of the lobby, her expression serene as if she had anticipated their arrival. So, Pythia said, her eyes gleaming with quiet knowledge, "You have succeeded. You have proven yourselves in the eyes of the gods." Katya nodded, a sense of relief mingling with lingering wariness. "We've seen what they intended for us, but we chose a different path." Pythia's smile was gentle, but her gaze held a hint of warning. "You have earned your freedom, yes. But remember, the gods rarely release their hold completely. Their influence is never truly gone. They may allow you distance, but it is only a pause in their watchful eyes." Caleb's expression tightened, his jaw set with resolve. "We understand that they may never fully let go. But for now, we've earned the right to make our own choices." Pythia's gaze softened, her voice a murmur that carried the weight of ages. "You have both come far. You've seen your potential, your strengths and weaknesses. Hold fast to your unity. It is your greatest shield against the whims of the gods." Katya exchanged a glance with Caleb, a silent promise passing between them. Whatever challenges lay ahead, they would face them together. "Thank you, Pythia," Katya said, her tone sincere. "For guiding us." Pythia inclined her head, her expression a mixture of pride and somber understanding. "You are strong, Katya, and you, Caleb. But remember, strength alone is never enough. The gods' attention may be diverted, but you have only just begun to navigate the intricate web of power and destiny that binds you." Caleb nodded, a rare smile touching his lips. "For now, a brief respite will do." Pythia smiled, her eyes gleaming. "Then go and enjoy while it lasts." Returning to Caleb's home. As they stepped into Caleb's home, a sense of calm settled over them. The familiar surroundings offered a rare moment of peace, and they felt the tension of their journey begin to ease. But as they moved through the room, a figure appeared, standing in the shadows with a casual confidence that made both Katya and Caleb pause. "David?" Caleb asked, his voice filled with surprise. David stepped forward, his usual smirk replaced by an uncharacteristically serious expression. Caleb, Katya, I wasn't sure I'd see you both here so soon. Katya glanced at Caleb, a spark of curiosity igniting within her. Is something wrong? David's expression softened, his gaze flickering between them with something akin to excitement. Not wrong, exactly. But I do have news, and it's something you'll both want to hear. He paused, a grin spreading across his face, mischief flashing in his eyes. Let's just say there's more to this whole godly business than even I realized. You both may have won this round, but there's something else at play. Katya arched an eyebrow, crossing her arms. What do you mean, David? David chuckled, his tone laced with mystery. There's someone you need to meet. Someone who might know a little more about your past and your future. Caleb's eyes narrowed, curiosity flickering beneath his guarded expression. And who might that be? David leaned closer, his voice a whisper filled with intrigue. Someone who's been watching over you, guiding you from the very beginning. I think it's time you met the one who started all of this. Katya's heart raced, her mind spinning with questions, but she held her ground, nodding to Caleb. Whatever lay ahead, they were ready to face it together, with curiosity, strength, and the determination that had brought them this far. Their journey had only begun.